Hey, 7th graders, Mr. Allard here, live from my couch. We're going to be talking about the Bill of Rights today. It's going to be on page 70 of your vocab, or not your vocab, but of your interactive notebook. So let's get it locked and loaded in the right position. Your first 3 slides are going to go on the fill in the blank portion. The next 10 amendments are going to go underneath the flap. On the top of your flap, you're going to draw a simple sketch or a picture. Okay, we went over this and we're going to go over this in class tomorrow, but just to give you an idea of what you're going to be asked to do. All right, here we go. All right, let me get into the corner here. The Bill of Rights. So what is the Bill of Rights? The Bill of Rights is going to be the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. The guys who wrote the Constitution, again, we talked about, these are really smart guys, very, very, very educated. And one of the things they wanted to make sure is they wanted to make sure the Constitution would last. So they built in the amendment procedure, which we're going to talk about, okay? In the amendment procedure, what they did was they allowed for the government, or they allowed for the Constitution to be able to. An amendment is going to allow us to change the Constitution. So this is going to allow the Constitution to grow and be able to add things as the future kind of dictates. Written by James Madison, the Bill of Rights is going to be included to gain support for the Constitution. So basically what happened was, remember we talked about the Anti-Federalists. They were worried about 2 things. The first thing that they were worried about was the national government was taking too much power away from the states. Second thing that they were worried about was the national government could take rights away from the people, much like the British government had done to the colonists. The Bill of Rights is added to take away from that second portion. These are actual rights that the government cannot physically take away from the people. The rest of the Constitution is all about the division of state and local power, national powers, what the Congress can do, what the Senate can do, etc. This is the only portion where they talk about physical individual rights. And this was created to get the Constitution support from the Anti-Federalists. The Bill of Rights, with the Bill of Rights included, the Constitution was quickly ratified by 13 states. The Bill of Rights was added about late 1700s, and it's really a lot of states, like particularly Rhode Island, New York, Virginia, some of those states with really, really close elections. If it was not for the Bill of Rights, they probably would not have ratified the Constitution, and maybe the Constitution is never fully ratified by all 13 states, or at least not in the 3 years' time. All right, let's get right down to the amendment. So whenever you think of the First Amendment, I want you to put up one hand. Okay, let me try to get it in here. All right, one hand. Remember, one First Amendment, one hand, 5 parts. First part is your thumb. This is assembly, right? Assembly means we're going to come together. We can come together to discuss something like creating a law or something like that. That means it's good. It's good to come together and discuss things, all right? Back up. Freedom of the press. That means the government cannot stop the press from publishing materials, regardless of how it makes the government look. So I always think of the pointer finger because that's how you hold your pen or your pencil when you write. Freedom of speech. I always remember your middle finger. Now we all know that the middle finger as your freedom of speech finger means something that is not appropriate for us to be discussing on a flip lesson or in school. I like using this because that message not only tells you that yes, you have the freedom of speech, the government cannot limit your speech. However, that doesn't mean that you do not have consequences for that. You could put something on Facebook that's completely inappropriate and your job could still fire you for that. You may lose friends, you may lose other stuff based on that speech. So yes, you have the right to do it. The government can't take that away from you. I like to think of the ring finger as freedom of religion, right? When you get married, you put a ring on it. A ring for religion. Lots of times when you get married, you do so in a church. The government cannot say or value one type of religious belief over another. And then finally, I think of your pinky finger for petition. It starts with a P. All right, you can make a formal demand, and I like to think of formal because when you drink your tea, pinkies up, a formal demand or request. Second Amendment, really pretty simple. Second Amendment is going to be your right to bear arms. Think about flexing your arms when you do this. This is particularly in the news right now with various gun violence and the ideas of gun control and things like that in the news. The Second Amendment specifically says that the right to a militia, a well-regulated militia, to keep and bear arms. How that plays out in the next coming months is going to be very challenging to see if this Second Amendment can hold up with what's going on presently. The Third Amendment, all right, the government cannot house or quarter troops assistance. This is something that's not going to really impact us today, all right, but this is something that goes back as a response to how we were treated by the British as colonists. Remember with the Quartering Act and the Intolerable Acts, the colonists were forced to house British troops in their homes. They wanted to make sure, proponents of this amendment wanted to make sure that this would never happen again. Is this going to happen in 2018? No, it's not. But in 1787, this was still a fresh reality because, again, the war has only been over for about 7 years or so. So this was something that was still in their minds. Fourth Amendment, freedom from illegal searches and seizures. How do you remember this one? Think of what's a door for? All right, a door is for keeping people out. A police officer or whatever cannot illegally search your materials unless there are two things happening. Number one, they have a warrant, meaning they have the right given to them from a judge to search your property for some way, shape, or form. Number two, you have probable cause. So I would like to use this example. The police are investigating a bank robbery. Somebody speeds past them, money flying out of the car. They pull the car over, obviously because it's speeding. There's money flying off the car. They look in the back and they see an open bag of money. They have a probable cause to search that car. If that wasn't happening, if a car just went by speeding, they would not have probable cause to search that car because there's nothing saying, a speeding car is just a speeding car. The Fifth Amendment, there's a lot to it. This is the right of somebody who's accused of a crime. So they wanted to make sure to protect people even if they were accused of a crime. So number one, you have the right to a trial of a jury by your peers. Number two, there's no double jeopardy. What that means is you cannot be found guilty of the same crime twice. You cannot be a witness against yourself. This is that idea of, you've probably seen on TV, of the people say, I plead the Fifth. I take the Fifth Amendment. You can't be a witness against yourself, meaning you can't really admit to something or answer something if it makes it seem like you were the person who committed that crime. Guarantees due process, meaning that we're going to follow proper procedures in order to fill out this crime. And the government cannot take away private property, cannot come and seize your private property. Sixth Amendment, right to a speedy trial. Okay, so right to a speedy trial, meaning we can't arrest you and then spend the next 10 years finding evidence to prove it was you. Has to be in a speedy process, and the judge will usually set that. A trial the next month, a trial in the next couple weeks, or hearings that move it along, that you're not going to be spending a ton of time behind jail or in prison. The Seventh Amendment is the right to a jury trial in civil cases. All right, this means if there's a case involving money, you're suing people. Think of all the commercials that you see, 444, 444, call William Battar, Celino and Barnes, all those folks. This is where this right comes from. I always think of lucky number 7. All right, I pull the jackpot, I pull down the slot machine, I'm looking for sevens, I'm looking for money. To show you how dated the Seventh Amendment is, you could do it if you were owed $20. The Eighth Amendment, no cruel and unusual punishment. Meaning that they can't do something negative against you. You're caught stealing, they can't chop off your hand. I always think about this as I always think of 8 dead spiders. It would be both cruel and unusual if you showed up late to my class if I made you eat 8 dead spiders. It'd be cruel to the spiders because I had to kill the spiders. It'd be unusual because, eating 8 dead spiders, that's kind of weird. I was just late for a class. No cruel and unusual punishment. The problem here is what happens with the death penalty. Is that cruel and unusual punishment? The courts, for the most part, have said it's not, as long as it's done within a reasonable time frame. The Ninth Amendment, okay, one of the problems, and Alexander Hamilton said this, if we list out all the rights, that's it. That's all we can have. All right, that's called the enumerated powers, or something fancy term like that. So James Madison, when he wrote this, made sure he put in the Ninth Amendment, which specifically says people have rights. I know it says righted in there. It should say rights, even if they're not listed in the Bill of Rights. So just because some rights that are not listed in the Bill of Rights as of, or things like the right to vote, that is a right of the people to have. It's not just because it's not listed there. We can't think of all the rights in the world. There are basically, the Amendment number 9 says there are rights not limited to just these Bill of Rights. 10th Amendment, here comes for you Articles of Confederation people. All the rights not given to the national government are going to belong to the states. Here's where states' rights come to. When you think of the 10th Amendment, you think of states' rights. This is where we get the power from the states. This is going to create the concept of federalism, where the national